additional questions for Kurt? Okay. Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate your time.
I'm sorry I couldn't be there. If y'all have any more questions, feel free to give me a call back.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
So it's about $2 million.
So $3 million for the low risk, additional 96 low risk beds.
Okay.
2.52 million to finish out the space in the tower
The 96.
for 96 additional beds.
And 6.37 to put the fifth floor shell on it.
Right.
Which I really think we need to do.
Thoughts, opinions?
I just want to point out.
That gives us 192, I'm sorry.
That's right. I want to agree. The concern I have is that we're kind of back where we were a year ago in the number of beds just going through the roof. When we look at the standard projection numbers and when we're looking at that 2022 number of 1582, that's making the assumption that none of the programs that have been put in are successful. When you look at the adjusted projection, which is really probably the most realistic from a planning standpoint, the 2020 number is 1362, which is what we're meeting. When we look back at the jail studies that have been done, not only this one but the previous two, one of the things they stated over and over in there is that plan for expansion for your 20-year number, but build for your 10-year number. Because of changes in technology, changes in attitudes, how jailing is done in general, there's a lot of trends that come into play, technology changes. I'm totally in favor of shelling out the fifth floor and shelling out the low-risk space. I think, especially on the low-risk side, that space could be used for something since we'll be imploding the tower immediately and losing that space. So I think it's important that we plan ahead and make sure that we have the space to keep expanding. But I'm very concerned that our numbers are getting up so high because while we can fill them with numbers from other counties, we're not making money on it. I mean, truly, when you look at the cost of carrying the note on the bond itself, it's not a moneymaker. It helps offset our costs. But if we fill it up, we've also got to have additional staff to watch them, and that does not come into account. So I think it's really important that we look at having the room for that 20-year number and even beyond. 10 years from now, we're going to have to address this again and see where we're going 20 years from then. So it's an ongoing process, and we need to make sure that we're keeping that space aside, which is what the master plan was intended to do in general. And I think shelling out that space now is very smart. But I really think that we're making a mistake by finishing out beds now that we may or may not need 20 years from now.
And Mark, your comment about that we would have to staff it. Thinking about that will be a problem because I don't know. I'm hoping that we will be very successful in being able to attract and maintain the staff for the additional inmates that we'll be bringing back here. But it's traditionally it's been a problem to keep detention officers. Hopefully with improvements in pay and improvement in environment, we'll be more successful.
I show a total cost if we were to shell out the fifth floor, shell out that space of the low risk that we can eventually house an additional 96 beds, inmates. And if we added the demolition cost for the Carlton and potential land acquisition that's adjacent to the Carlton, the total cost would be right at $109,875,000. And all I did was add those three numbers for the additional shell out space in the.
Did that count the 96 in the tower or not?
That did not count.
Did not count this. So
because that's shelled out space, we can go back and complete that.
So it'd be $112 million to complete that. Is that right? The 96 in the tower,
Approximately.
I think we're building it short, guys. Just want to be on the record. I know it's politically correct to do it, but I'm telling you, you're building it short.
And Mr. McGinnis, I actually actually agree with you that we may be building short, but with the programs that we're implementing, I'm feeling like the number of beds that we're doing right now will be enough beds. We have the shell outs. If we need to add additional beds, we can do it. It's not like we have to go out and acquire land and start all over again, because we have the shell outs there.
And I agree with Mr. Priestley and Ms. Hammond that we do need to look forward, but we're not taking into account the programs that we're getting in. I think the shelling out will cover us.
Well, let's get a feel for what the task force thinks. How many of you would be in favor of approving the plan as it was presented by HDR with no changes? $99 million, no additional, no changes. That would be the package that we present to voters.
If you don't mind, I'm going to speak to that because I think
hands go up.
Go right ahead.
Pardon me, National.
You go ahead. I want to ask you.
There are a couple of elements that you guys, that the court has already talked about this morning, which the $99 million does not cover, the demolition cost and the real estate cost. So in that regard, and in fairness to the voters, I think we need to get all the costs out on the table, whatever they are, and make sure that everybody casts an informed vote, be it here or outside when we do it in November. So I would be against that.
Ashton?
I would be for doing the $1.8 million addition, and close out. The fifth floor, I have one question on. I would be support, framing that out, because that would give us 400 beds in the future, plus or minus. That would be easy to put in. My question is, from an aesthetic viewpoint, which I've never been for a jail downtown anyhow, but when you build a fifth floor, it's going to look a whole lot larger than a fourth floor. And so I was wondering, if we'd have some people, I know that aesthetics are very important, and I would think a five-story jail is not going to be as aesthetically pleasing.
Well, you may be right. I'll say this. I think even with a five-story jail, it's going to be shorter than, it's not as large as the Carlton. So.
But that given, I would think that it would be wise if we shell out the fifth floor and then probably shell out the partial, because what that gives us is a lot of room in the future. Whatever happens, we're not probably going to have to do more than just finish it out for quite a period.
Who here, if I took it by show of hands, who would be in favor of taking the presentation, adding the demolition and land acquisition cost, the additional cost to shell out the low-risk facility? Now I'll give you those numbers. To add the demolition cost and the land acquisition cost, $2.7 million approximately. To shell out low risk, $1.8 million. And to shell out the additional fifth floor at a cost of $6.375 million, for a total of approximately $109,875,000. Who would be in favor of that?
Okay. Good.
Opposed?
Well, I need to clarify. I want to make sure I understand what's going on. Sure. In that regard, in terms, are we, with the number of beds that proposal would provide, are we consistent with the numbers that CGL forecasted? I mean, are we exactly, or I'm a little lost in terms of the numbers?
We are consistent.
Consistent with it, yeah. I think so, I believe so.
There's a range, and I mean, it's based on a lot of different factors, but we're
Right.
consistent.
Okay. And then for me, that's important. We spent a lot of time and money and hired the best experts we could in the United States to make those projections. I want to make sure we're tied to it. If they're inadequate, I need to know about it, and we go back and do the adjustments. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. I would favor.
And in the spirit of cooperation, Your Honor, I'd be supportive of that.